Today's seminar is about your purpose, life purpose. I'm going to talk about life purpose and a calling. A lot of people ask, the deeper thinkers, if you could ask anything from a psychic or your higher self, a guide. The top question on a lot of people's list is, what is my life purpose? And I know this from work that I do with people on this deeper level. People often don't feel clear about what their life purpose is. So I'm going to talk about that today. It's relevant because the kind of work that I do and that I train others to do in holistic healing, energy healing, doula work, even reflexology is often, I would say, purposeful work, work that is a calling. And yeah, there's lots of work that people can do, lots of careers people can get into for really logical reasons. And so often early in a person's life, they'll feel pulled towards doing more logical, or maybe you could even consider it rational work because it makes sense. So these would be very kind of conventional careers like teaching, nursing, working in the financial system. And that doesn't mean that those conventional jobs can't be a calling or fulfill one's life purpose. But when one's calling is towards being a healer, for example, or getting into energy healing, it's really normal for people to get into that later in life because because it is less conventional. It doesn't fit in the box. It's not something that maybe family or friends would find to be respectable. People might not understand it, or you might judge yourself if you got into that really early. I'm really rare. I did get into that really early. I was 21 when I signed up for reflexology training, and I knew I wanted to be a reflexologist when I was a teenager. I don't see that very often. The great majority of our students are somewhere in their middle of life, 30 years and older kind of thing is what is most common, and even at retirement. So sometimes people work their whole lives in a more conventional job, and then when they retire, they kind of give themselves that permission to follow their heart. But before I get too far into that, I do want to talk. We're going to come back to the difference between like what is one's life purpose and what is a calling. And take what resonates with you, leave the rest, because this really is kind of coming from my own perspective. And yeah, and this is going to go a bit deep. So I'm going to start with purpose. I actually believe that we all share a life purpose, all of us, not just the people who are called to this kind of work, but humanity, the collective, I think shares a life purpose. But how we get there is very individual. So what I think the purpose of this life is actually awakening, or what the yogis call self-realization, or what Christians call achieving Christ consciousness or being saved. Sophia mind is another name for Christ consciousness. So I think that that's everyone's life purpose is waking up, is kind of becoming more aware, more and more aware of who and what you really are, and kind of becoming lucid in this dream state that is life. So why does that what does that have to do with, becoming a doula, for example? So while I think that's everyone's life purpose, I do believe that how we awaken is very individual. So there's not just one path. I believe that every person in your life is playing a role in your awakening, and you are playing a role in their awakening. And so we, in relationship with each other, whether that's kind of casual or very deep, whether it's professional or more romantic or in friendship, that we're playing a role in each other's awakening. So we're interacting in ways that give us opportunities to wake up. And I don't think waking up happens like that, like it's just a flip of a switch and you went from asleep to awake. I think it happens in layers, like peeling off veils, and there are many veils. And as like, a veil comes off, you are more awake. And then another veil comes off and you're even more awake. And some of those veils can be removed quite quickly and it can feel a bit like a switch being flipped. But there's still kind of drifting in between layers of this like growth that we have towards this path towards complete self-realization. And so then the calling is individual. So our calling in life to me is how our heart is pulling us to be of service to others. And there's many ways. I remember recently, it was last fall, I was at a grocery store in a town where I had never been to that store before. It was in another province. And there was a man there, and he was working at the register in this grocery store. And this was before Christmas, remember? He had like lights on. I don't remember. I think he had a light up bow tie, maybe. And just like his whole outfit was sort of decorated, and it was really cute. But he was also so friendly. So I was with a Swami because this was when I was staying at an ashram, and this Swami asked me to drive her to the store, and so I did. And in our exchange between the two of us and him, he was just so friendly and joyful. And I thought this man's job could be seen as so simple, but he is serving his community in such a big way because every interaction, if he can bring that energy most days to such a simple thing as just like beeping your groceries through and exchanging money, if he can like just light people up a little bit through such a mundane, everyday task that we all have to do, then he is serving some kind of purpose. He's making change in people that he interacts with, and I don't know, it just really moved me. And so your calling can look like all different things. So this is, I'll go back to my earlier point that just because you get into more conventional work like nursing or teaching, um, whether, some people choose those professions because they're safer or it's kind of like what is expected of us, or we didn't know what else to do. So we kind of just like followed the path that was most obvious to us. But obviously, there are people that are really called to that work. There are nurses that are just amazing at what they do, and they should be nurses. And there are teachers that really should be teachers, and that is their calling, and that's the way they're meant to serve in the world. But yeah, there's lots of people that get into those fields too, and it's not their calling. So how do you know? Like, how do you know if being a doula or a reflexologist or an energy healing practitioner is your calling, or whether like a job that you're already in is your calling, for example? You'll know because your heart will tell you. So when something is not your calling, and or maybe it was and it served its purpose in your awakening and or in other people's awakenings, but now there's something else calling you, um, you'll know because it creates so much friction. It gets so uncomfortable to stay where you are. Every day, it kind of kills your soul a little bit to keep doing the same thing. It's like your heart is really communicating with you clearly, like, not this anymore. And you'll feel pulled towards something else. And you can try to deny it and suppress it because there's a lot of fear. We had a previous seminar about that. And if you missed it, there is a recording available. So you can ask for that one. It was called Fear of Failure in Holistic Business. But it's really normal for fear to come up. And so we can kind of ignore the calling. And by the way, before I forget, a calling also isn't just work. Like some people find their calling through volunteer work or, being a good neighbor or being a parent can be a calling, being a surrogate. Like there's lots of ways that we serve people. It's not just through work. But when it is through work, yeah, it just gets really uncomfortable to stay where we are. And there's that other thing that will just keep pulling at you and pulling at you, and it might not even make logical sense. And that's where that fear comes up, where it's like, can I trust this? Because, when I do the math, it feels very uncomfortable, and I don't even know if realistically I can be successful. But the thing is sometimes a calling leads you on a path that you can only see the next couple steps on the path, and you don't see the unfolding. So, for example, if I reflect on my own journey, this has definitely been a calling. And we're going to talk too about like um, why do we have, where do these callings come from? So I'm going to remember to come back to that. But in my own journey, I didn't even know what reflexology was because it was the first modality that became my work before doula or energy healing. And I was a teenager. So I'm really lucky that I found it early. And it was a library book. So I don't know, I don't remember why I was in the library or why I was looking in the natural health section. I think it could be just my soul led me there. I mean, this was a really long time ago, like we're talking the mid 90s. And I pulled a book out that said reflexology, and I had never even heard that word before. It's more common now, but back then I lived in a little rural town of 1,800 people, and there was no reflexologist in that town, I don't think. I didn't know anybody that was a reflexologist. I didn't know anybody that had ever gone for reflexology. I didn't see it on a magazine cover. So I pulled this book off of the shelf for some reason, almost as if it was, guided by my higher self or God or whatever you believe in. And the cover had the foot chart on it. And that just like really interested me. Why are there pictures of like kidneys and liver and digestive tract all on the feet? So I took this book out and I read it. And it really resonated on a deep level for two reasons. One, I loved how ancient it was and that it had roots all around the world, that different people throughout history learned that they could affect the body and promote healing by pushing points on the feet. It didn't come from just one place or one person. And the other reason it really appealed to me, and this kind of we're getting now to where callings come from. I knew from a young age that I wanted to be a mother, that was part of my calling. I think that was my first priority. What my heart was telling me was that I was to be a mother. But I wanted to work. I wanted to contribute financially. I wanted that freedom, but I wanted a lot of flexibility. I wanted to be self-employed. And so some of those things that shaped what my calling was and how I would serve came from this lifetime. And I'll come back to that. And yeah, so I knew I wanted to be a reflexologist really early, but I could have never imagined that now, what is it? 30 years later, my gosh, am I doing the math right? It's crazy. I would be teaching other people reflexology. I could have never imagined at that time that I would be a doula and have attended so many births over the years and the kinds of experiences that I've been a part of. I could have never imagined that I would travel and teach and on all of those things and create a curriculum. And so sometimes at first, the path might not seem very obvious or very logical. And there's an element of like faith that plays a factor, that you don't know where you're going. You can see the first couple of steps. And so it does take a good amount of courage, or a really strong pull that you just can't ignore. Like, okay, I guess I'm doing this and I'll figure it out as I go. And yeah, that fear of failure in business it really intersects really well with what we're talking about. So I'm not going to overlap too much, but there are ways to manage those kinds of that uncertainty that comes up and navigate your calling and moving forward in a way that is still responsible and keeps your nervous system regulated because safety matters when you're making big changes like that. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the friction before I move on too far, and that kind of recognizing the calling. So, yeah, work that once felt meaningful starts to feel really heavy. So we talked about that already, where it gets harder and harder to keep going and doing the work that we're currently doing, where the job is really becoming quite depressing. Sometimes it pushes you out. So life has a way of guiding you. If you're not willing to look at the path and listen to the calling, sometimes life will do it for you. And so sometimes people actually just lose their jobs out of nowhere. It's like you get laid off, the company closes, or something else happens that it's forced. Like you can't stay here anymore, and that can feel really out of control. But sometimes it's a great gift to get you to do the thing that you've been ignoring. A quiet restlessness grows. Restlessness, yes. It's and that's just that energy that really is speaking to you, and we're kind of trying not to ignore it, but we are ignoring it because it's freaking us out a little bit. Joy drains from routines that once energized you. So when we're listening to our soul, our higher self, our guidance, it can make us really happy. It feels aligned, it resonates like, okay, I know where I'm going, I'm on the path, I'm seeing synchronicities, I'm getting signs, this is what's right for me. And then when we're not on our path, if we've kind of veered off the path or we didn't make the turn, we missed the turn, it starts to get uncomfortable. And there is this restlessness, this like, oh, I need to create something. It's like an irritability. Um, and you can say no to your path, and it'll keep looping around. And I've had that experience too in my work where something was meant for me, but I denied it and was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not following, I'm not going in that direction. And then it just keeps coming back until you're like, fine, fine, I'll do it. And then you give in and it's like, oh, that was actually amazing. And I can't believe I almost didn't do that. So it's also okay to like miss the turn. The GPS will create a new route for you to get you to where you're supposed to go. A feeling that life is asking more of you. So sometimes, as people start to awaken and the veils start to come off, they have this sort of realization that um, there's got to be more meaning to life. Like why am I actually here? And that's where that question comes in. Like, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? There's got to be more to life than this. Like at first, maybe I thought what was important was saving up for a down payment on a house and getting a car and all. But like I've checked off some of those boxes, and now what? Like there's an emptiness there. So there's a longing to go deeper in life, and then that's where sometimes it's about following the calling and serving people in their awakening, even if people don't know that that's what they're doing, right? Like when you have conflict with a friend, for example, if a friendship starts to get friction and get a little weird, that is an experience of serving a role in each other's awakening. Whether or not we take that opportunity or not is another conversation altogether. But our interactions with people are very meaningful, and we can awaken people either through pain and like us pointing or poking at each other's triggers is part of the awakening process. And sometimes it's about holding space. And that's why, for example, doula work or energy healing, or even the conversations that happen through reflexology, they can sort of shine light that helps to serve purpose in somebody's awakening. It allows them to release their pain or move through their pain, or avoid pain, and that gets them more and more awake, for example. So I think I've explained pretty well now the difference between the purpose and the calling. The calling is like our individual way of fulfilling our shared life purpose of awakening. And so, where does that calling come from? So, I started talking a little bit about in my own journey, part of what shaped my calling and made it individual to me was my own present life's experiences. And so, that could also be a factor for you. So, what were some of those life experiences that made healing work and being a reflexologist and a Reiki practitioner and a doula my calling? I was an eldest sibling of other children. I was a parentified child. There was alcoholism in my home. And I was also a baby after a loss. So my mom had a baby before me, but he was born premature. And so his life was very short. And I think all of those things helped shape my personality. I also believe that my soul chose this life and those experiences because they served a purpose in my awakening. They kind of started me on this path that made it, that deepened my sensitivity. I think I came in as a sensitive soul already with a very sensitive nervous system, but those experiences, some of them were traumatic, but they gave me opportunities to awaken, right? So they gave me opportunities for healing, for understanding people's pain, for becoming very empathic, for being very nurturing, for prioritizing other people's emotional states and nervous systems. And so my work has been to find that balance so that I can do it in a healthy way. And sometimes I do very well at that. But there has been, even my work has served me in showing me where I still had room to heal. So our current life experiences definitely shape or point to a specific path that would call to us. But also past lives can influence our calling. Sometimes we're doing work that we've done before and it just feels really familiar. And we don't know, maybe we don't remember those past lives, or sometimes maybe you have done regression work and it does come up. I apologize for the dog. She's probably going to cry and bark a little bit more, but um yeah, so sometimes our work is familiar and we do it many lifetimes, or sometimes we had an experience in our life. I'm going to let her out. Sometimes we had an experience in a past life that was very painful, and we're still healing from that in this lifetime, consciously or unconsciously, almost certainly unconsciously. And that's going to make us very sensitive to a specific thing. So, for example, if we had difficult birth experiences in a previous life, or maybe we were a partner of somebody who had very difficult birth experiences, and we didn't finish processing that in that lifetime or healing from it, our calling could be a way to continue working through unfinished work, because that's how that's the kind of the purpose that reincarnation serves. I do past life regression work as well using hypnosis. And it's very interesting to me as I get to know people deeply in this life. And then I do hypnosis with them and they recall past lives. And there's like they were doing the same things over and over and over. It's like I didn't get it yet, so I'm coming back to do it again, kind of thing. Or there's patterns or themes that continue on. So past life can definitely influence calling as well. Ancestral or family lineage. So this one blew me away how it influenced my calling in this life. I told you how I discovered reflexology when I was on the internet back in the late 90s, very early 2000s, in reflexology forums. A lot of the reflexologists that I found online were actually in the UK. It was much more common there at that time than it was in North America. And the other thing that I found really interesting was a lot of UK reflexologists worked very closely with midwives, because midwifery was also common there at a time where it wasn't here like it is now. And so they were seeing women at the end of pregnancy who were wanting to go into labor, and helping people in pregnancy using reflexology. And I had never heard of this before, and I was thought like it just lit me up like, oh, that's what I want to do. Like I want to be that kind of a reflexologist. I want to work with people when they're pregnant. And so that was another turn in my path. Something really spoke to my heart and pulled me in that direction. And then that led to doula work, and I had a home birth. But I was already working as a doula, and I had already been working with pregnant women for years when I had the conversation with my maternal grandmother that we had never had before for some reason. And I don't know why she didn't bring it up, but I asked my maternal grandmother if she was born at home. I knew that she had her babies, my mom and my mom's siblings. I knew she had them at a hospital because she told me she got the gas actually. So she had twilight sleep births for some of her babies, not all of them. And so I said, "Well, were you born at home?" And she thought it was like the silliest question ever because she was like, "Well, yeah, my mom was a midwife." And I guess she didn't know that I didn't know that. And it just was like, pardon me? Like, what do you mean your mom was a midwife? And so then she started to tell me a little bit more about it. And her mom was a midwife in her community, and so was her grandmother, her maternal grandmother. So there was a line of midwives, but it broke at my grandma because this was the time of twilight sleep and people stopped having their babies at home. And then obviously my mom had me at a hospital because that was what you did in 1980. And so me giving birth at home in 2007 and being a doula and supporting other clients in birth was a revival of this family lineage. It was literally in my blood, and I didn't know that. So that just like blew my mind that I was doing the same work as my ancestors. And so it was very meaningful to me, and it did not feel like a coincidence at all. And so there can be things, it reminds me, my husband, for example, building and fixing things for him seems very natural. Like he can build anything, whether it's made of metal or wood, he can fix anything. He knows how to use every tool. And yet he was raised really far away from his dad. So it's not like he grew up in a garage doing these things. His dad lived 5 hours away. And so, where does this come from in him? But he does come from a line of men who were builders. Like his grandfather built a tugboat, like a boat that had a kitchen on it and a bed, a really big boat, and he built it in his own garage. So it's in him. Some things are just natural for us, and so they can really point to our calling. We talked about sensitivity in the nervous system that recognizes suffering and how, part of that is just how we're made, and part of it is, that nature versus nurture. Some of it comes from our experiences in our life, like our own suffering that we've experienced and how we process, whether our needs were met by others or not met. So sometimes we're inspired by, for example, I have lots of doula students who say, I wanted to become a doula because I had a doula and she was amazing. And so I want to be that for others. And then we have other doula students who say, my birth was terrible. I didn't have the support that I needed. I didn't have a doula. I didn't know what a doula was. I had no idea that birth could be that hard. And I never want anybody to have that kind of experience. And so if I can help it, I'm going to help it. And so then it becomes a calling. Spiritual agreements or souls calling us into their journeys. Actually, I love this one. I remember when I was starting out as a doula, I was really afraid I would miss a birth. What if my phone died and I didn't realize, the battery died? Or what if like I was sick? What if I was at another birth and somebody else is giving birth and I can't be there? Well, that thought, now the dog wants in. Be right. So at this time in my work, in my career, I shared space with a shaman. And so I brought that fear to her. She's my friend. And I said, I'm really worried. Like, what if I miss a birth? And she said, Michelle, the births that you go to and that you support at, you're being called into those births by those babies. If you're meant to be at their birth, you will be at their birth. And if you're not meant to be at your birth, you won't be. And that really resonated and it really took a lot of pressure off, actually. I've only not, I think I missed one birth, and it was because it happened so quickly that she almost gave birth in the elevator. So it was like a meet me at the hospital kind of thing. But otherwise, I've never had births that overlapped where I couldn't be at both of them. It always works out. And it's been crazy, actually, sometimes how it worked out and the things that I worried about that I didn't need to worry about. So, and we have agreements too. We would have soul contracts or soul agreements with the mothers that we support, for example, or any of the people that we interact with, even the nurses. Like, we're, again, interactions can be really big, like being at a really long, meaningful, fulfilling birth where we feel like we really had a role and we were really needed, and perhaps like the support that we provided really made a difference. But then we have little interactions too that change people. It changes the course of the way they do things or the way they serve or how they think or their awareness expands. So whether it's little interactions or big interactions, we're all playing a role with each other. And so sometimes it's the agreements that we came in with that kind of lead us down a path or not. And so sometimes that's what's actually pulling us when we feel that in our heart, like I can't keep doing the same thing anymore. I need to do something different. Sometimes it's those other souls that are actually calling us into their experience, waiting for that interaction that I feel was kind of divinely planned. So when the calling persists, so here's some questions for you to kind of reflect on a little bit, whether you're here live or watching the recording. Again, thank you for your interest in this topic, and I welcome any thoughts that you have, or we can do one-on-ones, or we can talk a little bit about how you're dealing with this or how you have dealt with it in the past as you're kind of moving down the path. But in reflection, I would invite you to think about when you first felt drawn toward like healing work or birth work, for example, or it might be fertility work or helping moms with babies, whatever that first thing was. So I told my story. Mine kind of just, it came from, I found a book and I was like, oh, this resonates with me. And then it was a conversation that I saw online that resonated and lit something up on me. Do you remember what those earliest moments are where the path kind of started to go in another direction for you towards being a healing practitioner, or working in reproductive work specifically? And because the kinds of people that often feel called to this work have very sensitive nervous systems or are very empathic, sensitive to other people's pain or suffering, what kinds of experiences in your life perhaps shaped that for you or made you more sensitive? So when you reflect on your own childhood, or even maybe traumas that you experienced in adulthood, or people or experiences that inspired you, what were some of those experiences that shaped your sensitivity to others? And if you're feeling that friction, being pulled from conventional work and but feeling like you're pulled towards like a calling, for example, if you're feeling that heaviness, what parts of your life are feeling increasingly heavy? So where is it starting to feel like this is becoming a no? Might not be completely no yet, but like my time with whatever this is coming to an end. We can definitely talk when the time is better, Maya. Would love to help you process that, or just I'm curious about your experience. So, yeah, what parts of your life are feeling increasingly heavy? And this could be, it doesn't have to be work, right? It could be like where you live, the community you live in, the type of housing that you're in is starting to feel like a no. Um, or, maybe a change in your family dynamic with with children and, like they really need to like go to school now or not go to school or whatever it is. And what parts of your life make you feel most alive? So what lights you up? That can really speak to, the things you're supposed to move away from and the things you're supposed to move to. And yeah, when I reflect on my own life, sometimes that pull is just so intense. It gets so loud, and that's when like you have to make the change away from something and towards something else. So sometimes the question is not, why is this calling appearing in my life? But why is it appearing now? Why is this pull becoming more intense at this season of my life? And so sometimes for some people, exploring healing or birth work becomes a meaningful way to answer that call. So perhaps you're here watching this recording or here live because um, this is part of your journey towards awakening, or it may lead you to something else. It could be that just this topic speaks to you, but it's lighting up other things in your knowing or in your senses that are going to lead you. And sometimes taking a reflexology, for example, a reflexology course becomes a stepping stone to something completely different. And then somebody does get into nursing, it's like, oh, I'm actually really interested in anatomy and health, and I didn't think I would do so well at this. It's like I've done it before. And then you decide like you'd like to go to college and or being a doula for a few years and working with nurses in the hospital, and then it's like, oh, I would like to become a nurse or become a midwife. And so sometimes it's just a step in your path. Or you end up like me and you teach others or you develop curriculum. And we just don't know where the path is going to take us. But yeah, I'm really happy to support people in making those less conventional moves when it feels scary or helping people process what it is that's calling them or what's asking, what's starting to become a no, so they feel supported and don't have to do the journey alone. So thanks for coming live, Maya. It was nice to see you again. And for anybody else who's watching the recording, thank you so much for this energetic exchange and participating in this. Definitely feel welcome to email me as you're processing these things, just even to share like your own aha moments or, what you're realizing about your own ancestors or what you know about your past lives or your childhood and how that's shaping. If you just want somebody to kind of talk about these deeper, more meaningful things, I'm all for it. I'm all about deep conversations. So you're definitely welcome in my inbox, or we can schedule a one-on-one. Thank you very much. And great. Thanks, Maya. Thanks so much for coming. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day whenever you're seeing this, and I look forward to seeing you at another future seminar. Bye-bye.